Springer, right?
And welcome to Monday, as yes, it is getting and beginning to look a lot like Christmas. Glad you're here. We're here all week. Yes, we are. I know many of you are out and about Christmas shopping. I just saw some of you. But thanks for being a part of the program, and let's get started right now. Joe Burrow, have you heard of him? Seems like half the free world has by now. He wins the Heisman and gives an epic acceptance speech.
I didn't play for 3 years. You took a chance on me, not knowing if I could play or not. Forever grateful for you. Can you imagine a guy like Coach O giving me the keys to his football program? He just means so much to me and my family. And to LSU. I sure hope they give him a lifetime contract. He deserves it.
Wow, that was incredible. And the interesting thing is he talked a lot in that speech about where he came from in southeastern Ohio. A lot of money has been raised as a result. It was overall just an amazing and memorable evening for Joe Burrow, as it has been all year long. We had his dad on the other day getting ready for it. And have not heard whether Coach O's received a lifetime contract, but 2 more wins and he probably will. Meanwhile, the AP All-American teams are out, and at this point, none of this is really a big surprise. Joe Burrow, of course, the QB. Lineman from Georgia expected. Jamar Chase expected. And Bowden, that is nice to see. He deserved it. He really did a lot as an all-purpose player this year. Derek Brown, of course, and so many other names on there that you expect to see. Still a great honor, though. So what you didn't see there, and you haven't seen this in a long time, since 2010, no Bama players on the first team All-American. And by the way, that's not because they didn't recruit well. They did. Alabama has dominated recruiting over the last 5 or 6 years, if not 10 years. So what does that mean? Well, it could mean a couple of things. Najee Harris was expected to be a first-teamer. He didn't quite get there. Tua Tagovailoa expected to be a first-teamer. He didn't quite get there. You can draw your own conclusions, but Wednesday is National Signing Day, and as we sit here today, Alabama is still number 1 in recruiting. Will that hold up on Wednesday? We'll see then. Dan Mullen is recruiting. He's doing a lot. He's also fielding off rumors, some promulgated right here, that he is a possible candidate for the Cowboys job. Now, after yesterday's win over the Rams, the Cowboys may not have an opening, but Dan Mullen never missing an opportunity to say something about anything today in Gainesville.
I mean, I plan on being here, what we're building, a long time. And I think a lot of coaches look at it that way. I don't know. I think in every level, I think coaching hires go in cycles. Right? You know, in college, it's like, hey, you know, who's the hot coordinator? Right? Okay. Then, no, it has to be guys with head coaching experience. The next, you know, there's like 3 years of hot coordinators. There's 3 years of who's a guy with head coaching experience. There's, hey, this is a big year. We want defensive guys. You need a defensive head coach. And then, you know, 3 years later, you know, oh, well, you got to score points and have an offensive head coach. And I think at every level, maybe goes through those cycles.
I could listen to Dan talk all day. He is so charming and energetic. Please give me some of that on a Monday afternoon. So we have a lot to do today with charming guests, including Tony Barnhart. Who better to start the show with one of my favorite guests and my favorite fill-in host, David Basil, on the Arkansas situation. He's also the founder of the Broyles Award, which was won this year by Joe Brady. We'll talk about that. Tim Brando. Can you do any better than Brando and Barnhart in the same show? The answer is no. And Billy Lucci talking about Texas A&M. We're spending a lot of time this week talking about the all-decade team in the SEC, and you'll see us vignette in and out of various schools throughout the week. One thing we'll also be doing is taking your phone calls at 855-242-7285. That's a normal tradition that we do every Monday, and let's get right to it. One of my favorite guys on Monday is Augie down in the Big Easy. Augie, good afternoon, my friend.
Good afternoon to you, Paul. Hey, hi.
Doing great.
How would you rank Joe's acceptance speech?
I thought it's the best I've ever heard. And yeah, as he started, I was kind of thinking to myself, like, this is a unique approach, because usually it's more like a hype video. You get up there, and he took a very methodical approach, which I like, by the way, is somewhat of a methodical, low-key person. And then he hit the ball. It's kept soaring, and pretty soon it was long gone. It was amazing.
I think he had all of Tiger Nation dropping a few tears. In your opinion, of the last 20 years, the last 20 Heisman winners, how do you think Joe stacks up in order? Is he in the middle, at the top, near the bottom?
Listen, I think he's way up there for this reason. I mean, sometimes the Heisman winner just really is a product of his team. I'll give you one example. 2000, I don't want to take anything away from this guy because he turned out to be a really good pro. But in 2000, and you know him down in New Orleans, in 2009, Mark Ingram won the Heisman Trophy.
Yeah.
He was not that spectacular.
No.
In fact, he may not be. He was not even the best running back on his own team.
No, I was surprised he won it.
He won because Alabama got on a roll. He made a couple of big plays down the stretch. Derrick Henry did the same thing. I'm not just picking on two Alabama running backs, but they both won because they were at Alabama. Some years, Jameis Winston, Johnny Manziel, they're just creatures of nature where, Jameis got off to a fast start. Manziel had the Heisman moment against Alabama in Tuscaloosa. Some other years, I try to remember back and think, and how did that person ever win it? Lamar Jackson, as crazy as it sounds, probably should not have won. Deshaun Watson should have. And now
he really should have.
And now you look back and go, well, how come? Of course, Lamar Jackson should have won. You can't let the pro career affect what happens in the Heisman.
No, well, let me ask you this: how many Heismans has Haskins and Barrett won between them?
None.
None. And it's kind of funny because LSU has a strong attachment to Ohio. Sherman founded LSU; he was from Ohio, and here comes Burrow. Hopefully, he'll give us a undefeated season from Ohio. But I got a question for you, Paul. This guy Chuck from New York who calls in with the odds. What's all that about?
Yeah, I don't know what it's about, but I know it's about to be past tense.
And I got to say, Larry, I think it's funny and all, but Larry suffers from a serious but all too common problem, which has plagued society for generations. Long ago, it was considered a personal fault of choice, but now health professionals have labeled it what it is. It's a disease. We laugh and joke, but it's serious, and the impact on health and society and families, it's a plague. And while there is treatment for it, it's really hard to overcome. And from my estimate, about 50% of your callers suffer from it. And let's just call it what it is, Alabamaism. It's intoxicating, but don't try to cure these people on their own. They need professional help, and they need to give you a call, Paul.
And Augie, I thought I was one of the leading experts in the world on that, having spent as much time as I did. But I don't think even all the experience that I've had in Alabama, I'm quite qualified right now.
I think you're making it worse. I think you're kind of making it worse, because the more you talk about it, the more outraged they get. So keep trying, Paul. Keep hitting there. And for my friend Harry, I just want to ask him, how many Heisman winners has there been from Tulane? Do you know, Paul?
I believe there has been none.
You got it. So good luck to the Greenies in the bucket of beef bowl. Thanks, Paul. Take care.
That's what I like. The old LSU-Tulane rivalry from yesteryear, which is not easy to find right now. Ben is in Ohio. You're next. Good afternoon, Ben.
Hey, Paul. It's nice to talk to you. First-time caller.
Thank you very much.
A big fan of you guys. Big Buckeye fans up here in Ohio. But I just wanted to talk to you about this. I don't know, some guy called you talking about Burrow not being good enough to play for the Buckeyes. It really came down to a freak injury, He injured his hand. He was a second-string quarterback behind Barrett. then, he goes down, and then Haskins, steps up in the Michigan games, has unbelievable game, kind of gave him the upper hand, the next season, but they battled it out in the spring. If you watch any of the spring highlights, I mean, you could see every Ohio State fan that's a true Ohio State fan knew this kid was going to be, special right when he was, But I hate to see them saying that he's not good enough for anything like that.
No, well, listen, hey, thank you for the call. The Burrow story is fascinating. It's just one of those situations where both schools did fine, and I'm really happy for Joe. Hey, thank you for the call. We're up against a break. A lot to do on a Monday. SEC Heisman winners. Some good ones. Burrow, Henry, Manziel, Cam. Of course, Tebow was in 08. Ingram in 9. A couple of runner-ups in there. By the way, does Alabama claim Jalen as a runner-up?
Yes.
Okay.
I think they have to, right?
Yeah. I mean, look, I'm not saying Ohio State claimed Burrow, but Ohio State was tweeting out pictures of Burrow in uniform in scarlet and gray.
I thought it was really classy at the end of the Heisman ceremony for him to tweet out the Burrow thing from the Ohio State account. I thought that was pretty classy.
I like Burrow going through. I mean, you get the announcement. You get the normal handshakes and hugs ball with the other finalist, but he made his way across the family, the LSU coaches, the Ohio State coaches, and then back up on stage. It was a very nice moment there.
It was incredible. And listen, I've watched some unspectacular Heisman speeches, and for too often I think the young guys are just confused in the moment. They feel like they have to thank everyone from their kindergarten teacher on up. But Burrow just he did not have any notes. You realize how tough it is to speak in front of 8 people, let alone 8 million, without any notes.
Pretty tough. I mean, he was giving speeches all weekend, right? I mean, he won every single award I feel like he was up for that whole weekend. So
yeah, but you know what? It's a little different. Winning the Giannitis in Baltimore.
But that's a good point, because you could tell by his raw emotion. Sometimes the Heisman Award, it just becomes this popularity contest.
Yeah.
It felt like this was more. He was the best player in college football this year. He realized everybody that helped him get there, and it was this emotional thank you to everybody after, the long journey that he had and everybody had. It was really very cool moment. Great speech. Going to go down as one of the top 5 speeches of all time, right?
I agree.
No doubt. A couple of things to pass along. Barry Odom has been officially named as the defensive coordinator at Arkansas. Well, we already knew that since Sam Pittman told us that here Friday afternoon. Also, Cecil Hurt reporting that DB Trevon Diggs and edge player Terrell Lewis are not at practice today and not expected to play in the Citrus Bowl. It seems like most of the Alabama players are, but those are 2 big losses to the Crimson Tide defense. Let's continue with more of your phone calls at 855-2427-285. And David is up next in Ohio. Hello, David.
Hi, Paul. How are you today, sir?
We're doing great. Thank you.
Well, thank you for taking my call. It's been about 6 months since we have visited. I just wanted to touch base with you concerning Arkansas's hire of Sam Pittman. After listening to the interview the other day with you, I began to get a better sense of some confidence in that hire, and I just wanted to touch base to see what it does in establishing a good foundation with him in the hiring of Barry Odom. And have you heard anything about offensive coordinators?
No, I haven't. But I will tell you. And listen, a week ago, I think we were all equally shocked by the naming of Sam Pittman. I kept saying we need to wait. We need to talk to him, and he blew me away on Friday. I was really moved by him, and I think he will pass that test. Now, his staff is critical. I think bringing in Barry Odom is a shrewd move, because Barry Odom has experience where he doesn't. as a head coach and as a coordinator, and I think that could be invaluable. Thank you very, very much for the call. Let's talk to Ben in New Orleans. Hello, Ben.
Good afternoon, Paul. Thanks for taking my call.
Thank you.
Of course, we're all goo-goo gaga over Burrow and the LSU Tigers, being a Tiger fan, et cetera, et cetera. But I just wanted to mention a couple of things, if I may. I'm sure you're aware of it. Marcus Allen probably paid Joe Burrow the highest compliment he could have after the Heisman Award presentation by telling him your speech was greater than your season.
Wow.
That's quite a statement coming from a Marcus Allen to a young man. And I'm sure you're aware of, but the food bank in Athens, Ohio has now raised $176,000 with a $250,000 goal.
Yeah, that was so interesting because, I mean, he did it very carefully. It wasn't over the top. It wasn't offensive. And by the way, you're never going to be offensive trying to help undernourished or less fortunate people. But he did it in such a classy way that I was really glad to see. And I'm thrilled that people have stepped up.
Yeah, it's great. And, I'm sure in the future, once he becomes the number one draft choice, he's going to do more for more people. It's just been a joy to watch. His parents should be extremely proud, and they've done a heck of a job. Thanks again for taking my call.
You got it. Thank you. Greg is up next. Hey, Greg.
Hey, Paul. Thanks for taking my call. When you watch a young man get up and give an extemporaneous speech, and probably what is the most important moment in his college football life to that point, it makes you like him even more. I was obviously sad when they beat Alabama, but he's hard not to like as an individual, much less as a football player. And I've been wrong plenty of times about things in life and sports, and you and I had conversations before the season started about what was this team really going to look like, and we've heard it before, and we have never seen it. And then this year, they proved a bunch of us wrong. And I think that's a testament to his work ethic. And, you had a caller on earlier who made mention of the fact that he had an injury, and no one knows what would have happened if he just stayed there, if he'd been as good or not. But he was an average quarterback last year, became something magical this year. And it was almost Tom Brady-like in the performance aspect, in that it was it could appear mechanical to watch, but he was very methodical, and I think he's a methodical person. He's not hyperbolic, not bombastic, and he comes out. He's very confident and humble, and he makes it work. And so, piggybacking off your last caller, he is going to have an even larger impact on his community and those around him when he has that NFL career that's awaiting him. And so I tip my hat to him. So he's going to be a special guy, and I hope his NFL career is just as wonderful as it is as his college one is, Paul.
Thanks, Greg. Appreciate the call. Let's continue with more calls, and Patrick is up next. Hey, Patrick.
Hey, Paul. I called you last year and talked to you, but the guy said we just need to talk about Joe Burrow. All right. I was listening to Joe Burrow's speech, and I was talking to my wife about it, and it kind of got to me because you never see somebody that shows that real grateful, gratitude. They're too young to really know about it. And it shows when somebody has been through something. And I just,
Yeah, Patrick, and I don't know about your own circumstances, but I have a sense that both of us have been through difficult times in our lives. And I think when you do that,
you have no idea.
When you do that, you have a greater appreciation. And Joe is very stark in his description of. He's a football player, and he didn't play football for a couple of years. That's a big deal.
Yeah, and when Mark Ingram, he did his speech. He showed emotion.
Yeah, well, he talked about his dad, sure.
Somebody's genuine, somebody is just truly heartfelt about what they're saying. I don't think anybody told Joe Burrow what to say.
Listen, I'm willing to bet you that Joe Burrow had thought about that moment. He probably had a good idea of where he wanted to go. But by the way, I've never had a setting like that. But I've had good intentions sometimes in speaking and had bad results because it's hard to get everything you want to say said in the right frame of mind and in the right context when you're looking down, there are bright lights in front of you and you're thinking that this is the greatest moment of your life. Your parents are there, your coaches are there, your friends are there, and there's also millions of people watching.
It's kind of like right now, I'm talking to Paul Finebaum. This is like the brightest time of my whole freaking day.
Well, listen, Patrick, you may say that, but I can't tell you what that means to all of us here because we oftentimes hear the opposite of that from callers. So we're pretty gratified that this means something to you.
I got a 6-year-old boy, a 4-year-old boy, and a 2-year-old boy that they do things that brighten my day or whatever. But I've tried to call you a bunch of times and they've been able to get through. But I also wanted to add this in there. Last year when I called, you said that we were going to beat New Mexico State, Auburn basketball. And then you said we were going to get knocked out by North Carolina. Boom. We made it to the Final Four, baby.
So true. Well, Patrick, thank you. All the best to you and your family.
I just want to throw that out there.
I'm glad you did. We're heading to a break. More to come here on the program. Your phone call. How about that? Dog since 2010. Pretty self-explanatory. 99 and 36. Anyway, it's all right there for you.
5 bowl wins. I guess you can count Brian McClendon as a coach, but really 2 coaches.
What a bowl game.
Yeah, that's fair.
A lot of great accomplishments for the Georgia Dogs this decade, Paul. I think they didn't have the best of the decade, but I think of the teams that didn't win a national championship this decade, Alabama, Auburn, I think Georgia's right there in that category of having the better decade in the conference.
The best team to not win a championship this decade?
Between them and LSU, right? LSU has a Heisman winner on their side, Lale.
Yeah, that's fair. Paul, is that safe to say that Georgia's the best team this decade that hasn't won a title?
Yeah, the record speaks for itself.
Yeah. We did a Mount Rushmore of the best players this decade only. So, Aaron Murray, Todd Gurley, Nick Chubb, Sony Michel.
Pretty tough to beat. 3 Georgia running backs, became RBU this decade, solidified that definitely.
Yeah.
3 guys.
I mean, that is
Aaron
just...
Murray has the passing touchdown career record in the SEC. It's a great trivia question 20 years down the road. Those are probably the 4 best Georgia players. Luckily, I had a chance to see all 4 of those guys during my time at Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
I think those would probably definitely the Mount Rushmore of Georgia guys.
Yeah. Paul, how would you remember Georgia? When you're going back in a couple of years, you're saying Georgia this past decade, how would you tell people about it?
Yeah, I think this year was a disappointment. There's no getting around it. 17 was a great success winning the SEC, but nobody's going to remember the game against Auburn or the Rose Bowl. All they're going to remember is the 2-0 walk-off. It's been somewhat tortured, quite frankly, when you consider how great Kirby has recruited. Hate to be so bottom line, but what does he have to show for it?
He's got the SEC championship. They came close in 12 again.
Close doesn't cut it anymore, Georgia. That's a program trying to be elite, and to be elite, you have to win the national championship.
They're going to look back at 2nd and 26 as the thing that's going to haunt them for the rest of the time. Until he gets one.
We live in a snapshot society where whatever the most important highlight is how you are going to be defined.
I agree.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a tough decade. I mean, it's a really successful one, but again, it feels like everything is just
It's the what-if decade for Georgia. I believe that's the decade.
Okay, we're back. Speaking of, we were talking about Georgia during the break about the decade, and Tony Barnhart joins us. Of course, he lives in Georgia, knows a little bit about the University of Georgia. Tony, always great to have you on. Merry Christmas. Thanks for being here. Good afternoon, my friend.
Merry Christmas, Paul. Glad to be with you.
So, I mean, we were having a hard time describing Georgia a minute ago, and I don't know. I hate to be so tough on them, but they still don't have that national championship they've been searching for, and that has been elusive for 40 years now.
Well, you look at the record and what they did. On the surface, it looks pretty good. 99 wins, 7 double-digit seasons, 5 trips to the SEC championship game. So that's been a pretty good run. But I hear from a lot of Georgia people. I have family that are Georgia people, and they talk about what might have been. I mean, Georgia certainly could have won the national championship in 2017. They were in position to do it. And I think all of us who were at that game the SEC championship game in 2012, when Georgia got down to the 5-yard line in the final seconds, if Georgia knocks that in, I think most of us feel confident that Georgia would have beaten Notre Dame for the national championship. So great 10-year run, all things considered. A lot of people would like to have it, but some of my Georgia friends think about what might have been.
And just in terms of this season, Tony, you know, the bitter loss against South Carolina at home, which really amazingly didn't hurt them very much. Frankly, thought it should have. And then the total evisceration in the championship game, and now they get to go back to the scene of the crime, the Sugar Bowl, where you and I used to look at the Sugar Bowl as the cherry on top of the cake. I doubt many Georgia fans are looking at it that way this time around.
Well, they certainly didn't look at it that way last year. I mean, the players were obviously, and Kirby Smart will tell you this, his guys were not ready to play Texas, and Texas really wanted to be there. So what's going to happen against Baylor? The reality is, Paul, is that the bowls, because of the playoffs, because we devote so much time and so much media attention to the playoffs, it is hard to sell the players on even the greatest bowls. And so that is the other side of the sword when we started spending so much time talking about the playoffs.
So what's at stake for Georgia, if anything, in that game?
Well, they're obviously going to play a team that in Baylor who can move the ball, who can score a lot of points. But we saw what happened last time Georgia did that. I think they're going to have to show to win it. They're going to have to show in that game that they're going to have to do more offensively. And really, moving forward, that's going to be the question for Kirby Smart. Ed Orgeron made a big change because he had to. Nick Saban made a big change because he had to. Does Kirby Smart need to make a change? And I think people will be tuning in for this game, the Sugar Bowl against Baylor, to see if they're doing anything more creative with the offense.
Tony Barnhart with us. Tony, recruiting ends on, well, it doesn't end. The first phase of it ends on Wednesday. And it's still a free-for-all between Clemson, Ohio State, Alabama, LSU, and Georgia. Are you watching this and looking for anything in particular, knowing they'll all do well, but what will stand out Wednesday depending on how the lineup is juggled?
Well, I've always believed that if you're somewhere in the top 5 or 6, you're doing fine. You're getting the players you need to win a national championship. I think those of us who watch Alabama want to make sure that they get the quarterback from California. That's going to be a big part of their future. I'm anxious to see kind of what Clemson does. They understand that Clemson's got the other great quarterback out in California is coming to Clemson. So I think the quarterback position is the one I watch most of all. See where everybody comes out of National Signing Day with that. It's just like our friend Lane Kiffin. Is he going to get a quarterback? Right now we're hearing that he is.
Speaking of hires, you mentioned Lane. 2 other hires came down, one from Appalachian State to Missouri, the other from Georgia to Arkansas. Your assessment of the 3 different hires?
Well, I think the Arkansas hire of Sam Pittman is just absolutely fascinating. It really is. Just from where he came from, you know, I'm sure at some point Arkansas said there's got to be another Ed Orgeron out there. maybe Sam Pittman is the guy. Eli Drinkwitz at Missouri. Everybody knows at Missouri the first batch of candidates that came up that the board of curators was not happy about. They go get Eli Drinkwitz from Appalachian State, and he goes from making $750 a year as Appalachian State's head coach to $4 million a year. I mean, is this a great country or what? So I think all those hires have been very, very, very fascinating. Of course, Lane Kiffin, that scene at the airport the other night was just. I told one of my friends, I said, that to get handed a baby right there on the tarmac. I'm sorry, but you just don't get that in the Big Ten.
A couple of other coaches survived, even though pundits wondered about them, including Derek Mason at Vanderbilt after another pretty average to terrible year, and Will Muschamp expected to maybe break even or do a little better, which wouldn't have been bad considering his schedule, but he fell well below that at 4-8. What's the, forget long-term future, what's next year look like for both?
Well, let's start at South Carolina. Obviously, bringing in Mike Bobo, Will Muschamp recognizes what a problem he has in the offensive side of the ball. Bobo was at Georgia under Mark Richt for 14 years, did a very good job at Georgia, and so they have got to pick up the pace on the offensive side of the ball. As far as Derek Mason at Vanderbilt goes, it was obvious that they missed Kyle Shermer and they missed Andy Ludwig, who left Vanderbilt to go to Utah as the offensive coordinator, where they had a very good year out there. So I think it all comes down to, particularly at Vanderbilt, they have got to do something about the quarterback position because they had very, very uneven play at quarterback. And I think that's being kind.
Talking to Tony Barnhart, so many questions and some great answers. Tony, Nick Saban, since we have seen him last, everyone has taken a swing at the pinata. We all know about his resume. We all know his record. But what's his future look like from your standpoint?
Well, first of all, let's see what happens on Wednesday. Right now, based on the ESPN projections, he's got the #1 recruiting class in the country. If he can do that again, I think that sort of calms everybody down. Obviously, next year they're going to have to be better on the defensive side of the ball, and I think they'll be okay offensively, even with the great players they're going to lose at the wide receiver position. But listen, next year's a big year for Nick Saban. I mean, that's where he's got to show that everything is under control, and they get better in the places where they need to get better. I just believe when Dylan Moses went down and was not able to go, I thought that was a bad omen for that team. And they covered up a lot of problems with a great offense and a generational quarterback. And at the end of the year, they could not overcome it when they played the better teams.
Tony, before you go, let's take a look at. Can't believe we're already here. A week from Saturday, a week and a half from now, the two playoff games. Oklahoma, LSU, and obviously Clemson and Ohio State. What happens?
I think LSU wins in Atlanta. They have become a much more balanced team offensively. I think the emergence of Clyde Edwards-Helaire at running back as a real weapon has really helped them. And I tell you what, Clemson, Ohio State is going to be absolutely fascinating. Right now, I'm leaning towards Clemson against Ohio State because I think Clemson, they really haven't played anybody, but they've beaten everybody pretty soundly. I think that's going to be a fascinating game.
Tony Barnhart. Tony, what's the Christmas tradition at the Barnhart house?
Well, we've got family coming in from all over the place, and then right after the playoffs, the first round, we're going to travel and see some other family members. So it's a nice little gathering here in Atlanta. We're going to have a ball.
It sounds cozy. I may have to drop by for some eggnog.
Please do.
I don't know if I can get in, but I'll drop your name heavily at the gate.
Well, my granddaughter's a big fan ever since you met her in Destin.
I thoroughly enjoyed that.
She would welcome you.
Well, I would look forward to that. Tony, thank you. Great to have you on. Merry Christmas to you and your family.
All right, Paul. Merry Christmas.
One of the all-time greats, Tony Barnhart, joining us with a lot of knowledge there. His former running buddy, Tim Brando. Yes, Tim Brando will be with us in about an hour and 20 minutes. So don't go anywhere. We are back after this. And your phone call.
That was as high as I was probably going to get on this moment.
Yeah. I know. Like when you go through and you look at that 2017 season, you go to Notre Dame, you beat Notre Dame in South Bend, you win the SEC championship game, and you win the Rose Bowl.
I would have just said, you know what, we're not playing anymore.
I mean, the game happened. That's the last part I remember in 2017 was the Rose Bowl. I don't remember anything else that happened.
I remember Georgia being up by, 13 against Alabama?
What? That never happened before. Not in Atlanta. I don't remember Georgia ever having a
the
big
most
lead versus
excruciating
Alabama,
part of
Paul.
that. As a Dog alum, like having that happen and having those other 3 games happen and then losing it the way you lost it. I mean, is that the most heartbreaking moment in sports? I've
had a lot, but that's up there.
I have to tell you, I mean, going back, I thought the 12 game was as bad as it could ever get to.
No. Georgia always remembers. There's always one more weekend. We always have one more level of disappointment. There's always
can it get
one
any
more
worse
level.
than
the answer is always yes.
And by the way, that was almost the opposite. I mean, because that game was over. Alabama had that game won. And then here comes Georgia down.
The best part of the 2012 game is people don't even remember. There was a review that took the interception off the board.
Alabama had won the game.
Yeah, it gave them second life.
With an interception, and they took it off, and then Georgia comes right down the field.
Every single time I see a quarterback in the goal line now, spike the ball. Always spike
That's when
the ball.
I knew it was over for Saban, even though he's won 3 national championships since then. Welcome back. Glad you are here. Let's continue with more phone calls. And Dan is in Louisiana. Hello, Dan.
Hey, Paul. Thanks for taking my call.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas to everybody.
You bet.
Paul, I was just, listening to everything, and Ben from Ohio kind of stole my thunder about Joe Burrow having the broken hand. But when Joe Burrow came to LSU last year, it was obvious that he, his passing accuracy was good, his pocket presence, running. He had a lot of talent, I believe, that wasn't being used. And I think that's one reason they brought in Joe Brady to maximize his talent. And with that being said, I'm just wondering, what does the SEC and LSU now have that the Big Ten, Ohio State, and them guys don't?
I don't know the answer to that, Dan, because the season has not concluded. So I think you have to wait and evaluate it once all the dust has settled. Cliche, yes. Fact, also true.
Right. But do you think you think that's the main reason they brought in Joe Brady, because of Joe Burrow's talent?
Well, sure. I think Ed Orgeron knew, based on what he saw last year, that Joe Burrow was a really good quarterback, but he needed to with the players that he had, especially the young ones coming in, he needed a different way, a different approach, and he found it.
Right. Well, okay.
Well, thank you. Thank you very, very much. James in Colorado. Hello, James.
Hey, Mr. Finebaum. I just want to, first of all, start off by telling you thank you. Thank you very much for you and your crew.
Thank you.
On a daily basis for grinding and giving us entertainment and information. Secondly, I called you last year, and you were very informative in giving me the lay of the land. We were a game time decision, seeing if we wanted to go out to Santa Clara and see that game. So I was just going to ask you to give me the lay of the land for Orlando this year and see what's going on down that way.
Yeah, I'm actually going to go down there for the game myself, but I don't know the lay of the land very well, other than it is Orlando. We were there a couple of months ago for the first game of the year, and one thing's for sure, the game will not overwhelm the community with all the tourists down there at Disney World. But it's a really good place to go. The weather's normally great, and there's about 14,000 hotels, so it won't be hard to find a room. And I think the game is, outside of the playoffs, it has a chance to be the most entertaining game.
I agree with you, and it looks like the Bama crowd might travel a little bit better down than they did to Santa Clara.
Well, I will tell you, and I've been to every national championship game for a number of years. I've never had a worse experience before the kickoff than Santa Clara, and a lot of it had to do with weather. The weather was miserable for about 5 days. It never stopped raining. It was cold. Of course, it's the Bay Area, so you're going to get that. But there was no atmosphere, no buzz, and the game sucked too.
So will SEC Nation be down?
Yes, we will do the game in Atlanta, of course. We will also do the game in Orlando on New Year's Day.
All right, rock and roll, Mr. Powell. We'll get on the phone and get some plane tickets and.
Yeah, well, one
see
thing,
y'all down there.
James, I'm through Orlando a lot. It's about as easy a place to get to. Now, where in Colorado are you?
We're in Colorado Springs, Colorado.
So you're not too far from Denver.
No, sir.
I've been there. By the way, it's a beautiful place, Colorado Springs. I went up there and I toured the United States Olympic Committee a number of years ago, and that is just an incredible town.
Yeah, it's growing. It's the baby to Denver, if you will, the B market to the A market of Denver. So
yeah.
It's growing. It's happening. Got the Air Force here.
No, it's fantastic. The academy's right there. Hey, thank you very, very much. I got to get on the outskirts of the academy campus. Ben is in Conway, Arkansas. Hello, Ben.
Greetings and kudos to Professor Winston Bartholomew Finebaum.
Thank you very much.
And the boys in the booth and all your staff.
Somebody finally called me by my legal name.
There you go. Paul, I've got a couple of comments about Sam Pittman, but I want to say something in general about the Razorback football program before I do. During this coaching hire search, we heard repeatedly, you can't recruit at Arkansas, you can't win at Arkansas, the head football coach job at Arkansas is not an attractive job. Paul, we've had a tough 8 years, but if you think back to that 2011 season, we were 11-2. We beat number 11 Kansas State in the Cotton Bowl. We finished the season ranked number 5 after having been ranked as high as number 3 during the season. Our only 2 losses were to number 3 and eventual champion, then number 3 and eventual champion Alabama, and to then number 1 LSU. And 9 years ago during the 2010 season, 10-3, we had a heartbreaking loss to Ohio State in the Sugar Bowl.
And by the way, I don't think that loss counted. I think that was wiped off the board.
Well, it was. I think it was vacated, but we got beaten that game, but just barely. And when people say, so obviously you can win at Arkansas. Now that was under the questionable leadership.
Hey Ben, hate to run.